Oh, thank you.
We'll just do it till the battery runs out.
Sure. And the shots are for any time. I don't
we
know
can
your
start with
format.
them. Let's start with them. Cool. So, welcome to Drinkers Jeds. I'm here with Peter, my brother-in-law, and we're in Dallas. Actually, Deep Ellum. How do you pronounce that?
Deep Ellum.
Ellum?
Yeah.
Cool. And what do we have?
We have a mango vodka martini.
And then shots of...
Tequila.
Nice. Let's start with
With
that.
some silver.
Yeah.
Salud.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.
Oh, that's good. Awesome. So, Eric and I are here for... Eric is out partying at a concert, and I just grabbed the opportunity to take as much of his time as I can just to talk about his experience as an actor, as a singer, someone who's pursuing full-time acting, someone who will be on Broadway. I'm convinced. I've been telling people that for years. And just seeing like what that life is like. Like I love film through Erica. Well, actually, I mean, like I've watched musicals since I was little. My dad was into music and was a music teacher. And through Erica, and my appreciation has grown, and just like my want to understand the actor and that, because it is a totally different world than what most people live in. But real quick, I always like to ask people, who they are, where you're from. So like, who you are, who your family's like, what school you went to, what you're doing now.
Yeah. Who I am, first generation American.
Mm-hmm.
First generation to go to college. South American family.
From
Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
Raised in Houston, Texas. Went to school there, then went to college, partially in Houston, and then transferred to Fort Worth, Texas, to go to Texas Christian University, and then working in Dallas and Fort Worth as an actor after graduating.
Yeah, awesome.
So that's what I've been doing.
So, and I met you. Were you a sophomore? When did we? You were still in high school when we met.
Yeah,
Was it sophomore year?
sophomore, junior.
Something like that. So, how'd you get into acting? Because I tell Erica all the time, like, you have a very talented family. Like, each one, you and your siblings all have some sort of art that you're good in. Like, you're, music, theater, acting. I mean, everyone in your family can sing. Erica is a talented writer. Anna can also sing, who doesn't do a lot of it, but she can sing and dance. Like, she's a phenomenal dancer. And, I hope this doesn't sound condescending, but like Denise, the oldest, her art is just being a mother and hospitality. Like,
and she has a lovely voice too.
Yeah,
she's super shy about it.
Yeah, she will like welcome anyone into the table, to her house.
Yeah.
On the other end, if you screw with someone that she loves, like the wrath will come up. Like, I think that's hospitality and art, and also her voice is just amazing, and like it's just awesome. Like, what got you into acting and exploring into your voice, because you're a phenomenal vocalist?
There's a couple of instances that stand out to me. One was in elementary school. The art teacher and the music teacher were in charge of putting on the musical. It was like 4th or 5th grade, and everybody had the chance to audition, and I just auditioned just cause. And I matched pitch with everything that they played, and I memorized the song, and they were like, oh, you have like a natural inclination, and you're good at this. So I guess that was like the first taste of hearing, oh, here's this thing that you don't really know anything about, but you're good at it, and you should continue to do it or look into it. And then it wasn't until my junior year of high school or sophomore year of high school where I did a show and I had a moment on stage. And I was like, oh, okay. I could do this forever.
What was that show? Do you remember?
Children of Eden.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Really? That was your first one?
Yeah.
Really? So do you remember the moment, like what it was?
It was, I was doing a scene where my character, one of Noah's sons, Japheth, is having this struggle over sneaking his love, Yonah, was that character's name, onto the ark.
Yeah.
And a scene they had together in a song called In Whatever Time We Have. And it was during that song where I remember like just having a moment, being on stage and doing that scene in that song and being like there was this feeling like inside, and I was like, wow, if I could do this for the rest of my life, like that would be awesome. And I was just like 17 or 18.
But was...
Or 16.
So that was like acting. Well, that was acting and singing at the same... in one package, but was there a moment that you started exploring like singing?
Singing for I think like a lot of artists happened for me through church.
Yeah.
And joining the praise and worship team when I was like 12 or so. And that was like because I wanted to sing and I wanted it was a connection I had. It was something that felt right and natural to me, and so that was my intro, was through praise and worship.
What happened first? Your interaction with the music teacher or whatever?
Yes, that happened first because that was elementary school, like 4th or 5th grade. So that was before I even joined a praise and worship group.
Okay.
At church.
Yeah.
You know, but between then and high school, where I did Children of Eden, in middle school was Miss Hudson, and one major show that I did was Into the Woods.
Yeah.
Stephen Sondheim show.
Yeah. There you go. That wasn't planned. He's right there.
It was not planned, but there he is.
Yeah.
Stephen Sondheim, and that left a huge impression on me. And I saw the recording of the Broadway cast for Into the Woods, which was another one of his shows, and that was definitely formative. The fact that you could tell these stories, because Into the Woods is all the fairy tales, but they're told in a very much Act 1, here's the fairy tale, Act 2, here's the reality of what happened after Happily Ever After. And as a young person, to learn that and to see that was very formative.
Yeah, because I didn't see the movie, and I never seen it on stage, but Eric and I actually saw it, I don't know how many years ago, and the second half just like broke me.
Yeah.
It was broken. And then the end scene, when does it happen? Is that the normal thing where at the very end they all come out in like normal clothes and they're like...
That is a directorial or production choice.
Okay, yeah. But like the second half where they're talking about the repercussions of what happened in these fairy tale scenes, and then the version we saw where they came out in contemporary, normal, everyday clothing, as in like this happens every day, like the fairy tale stories happen every day. Like I was broken. Just think about it now.
It's an extremely strong choice to make because it does communicate to your audience the truth of it. For example, Cinderella gets her prince, but then he cheats on her.
Yeah. Or just like that.
Or the baker and his wife, they get their child, they can have a child, but then they have all these other difficulties and complications after. Yeah. It's what happens after the happily ever after. What's the reality?
Yeah, like even now I'm just like, I remember that moment. I was just broken. Like, holy crap! Like they came out. I was like, it was like they brought it out of fairy tale storytelling into real life, and I was like, oh jeez.
Yeah, it was a very like a Brothers Grimm type of thing to do. Yeah, kind of expose the reality.
I'm going totally off my questions, but like, what is it about Sondheim? I mean, he's huge. Anytime you look into musical theater, he comes up as just like this top tier. So as a layman, like, what is it about Sondheim that is just above and beyond?
So besides him, like, you know, he's a genius.
What do you mean?
Just in general, he's extremely intelligent. He's proficient in writing words and writing music. He was essentially like the ward of Oscar Hammerstein, who was part of the formative pair of Rodgers and Hammerstein that defined all of musical theater, contemporary musical theater, starting with Oklahoma. Onward. And so he learned from the best how to tell a story, because Oscar Hammerstein's thing was not just writing a character, but how would that actual human being speak? Would they know this complicated, highfalutin word for this emotion, or would they just say, I'm mad, I'm angry? Like, he was very much about keeping it to the truth of that character and that person, that being. So immediately that draws in an honesty acting-wise. So Sondheim took what he learned from Oscar Hammerstein and he went to another level, because he was such a competent lyricist and musician, that what Sondheim does in his work, he writes pieces that are equally as strong acting pieces as they are musical pieces. He weaves together very successfully the acting and the singing, and that's what he wants for his stuff. And in fact, he goes a step further, and even though his music is very challenging, like technique wise and all that kind of stuff, he always says, I'd rather have an actor who can tell the story and can sing it reasonably well, rather than having a proficient, perfect singer who can't really act as strongly and tell the story as strongly. Because, even if your voice isn't perfect, you can still bring that story to fruition.
Yeah, because I assume
if the acting is there.
Yeah, I assume like anybody can relate to the acting and the story, and if the musical performance isn't like top tier, they can like, oh, that's fine. But like, if you're a phenomenal singer but a terrible actor, like, then it's kind of like lost. Like the bottom just drops out. The bottom drops out. Yeah,
that's really difficult and sometimes frustrating. Is you will see people who are phenomenal, people who are special, but maybe they have not acquired the skill, and I call it a skill, not a talent, very purposefully, because it's something you develop, something you hone. You don't just walk out there and you just know what to do. There are people who might be that way, and that's an exception, but for the most part, it takes a lot of work and self-criticism and self-discovery to get to that place. There certainly are people who just, like, they exhale and it's right.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But that is an exception to the rule. And even a lot of those people, to have longevity in a career, still invest in acquiring the skills through the hard work, not just the natural talent.
Okay, what's more important? Talent. I'm so excited for this. Talent or passion?
That's a great question. And I think it depends on the person.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like they're different in that talent, like it is what it is. If you have a talent for something, most likely you'll always possess that talent. passion. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you'll always possess the passion.
Right.
Like, even as a trained singer and as a trained actor, there have been times where I haven't felt a passion for performing the art in one way or another, or doing something. And so, like, that part didn't get focus or attention. You know, I moved that to somewhere else that needed it for my person. And passion is probably the easiest to have and the hardest to hold on to. Because it can be so impacted by exterior stimuli and events. Whereas your like natural talent is very much inside of you, and it's much more within your realm of control. So it's you have a little more direct impact on what that does to you.
Yeah. So like talent is like, I can do this anytime.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you kind of like the pieces you've done, but has there been a point where, you know, let's say you began with, let's say, this musical or this play, and halfway through, let's say something personal happened in your life, and like your passion for that play kind of just like died off? And like, how does that play out? How do you deal with that?
You know,
because I'm assuming someone other than you notices.
Yeah.
You know,
you make it work. Because at the end of the day, no matter what, if it's your profession, and that doesn't mean that you pay your bills doing it, because it's very difficult to do. Yeah. But you dedicate time, expertise, whatever it might be. There's a lot that goes into it. You put that into it, but absolutely that happens sometimes, and you have to figure out how you can use that to inform what you're doing. You know, one example for me, I was doing a musical called Songs for a New World. It's a beautiful piece by a well-known composer, Jason Robert Brown. Recently, they made a movie of his musical the last 5 years with Anna Kendrick and Jeremy Jordan. Okay. So his stuff is starting to get more mainstream. But while I was rehearsing that show, for example, like, you know, my great-grandmother died, and I like got that phone call while I was doing it. So I knew I had a responsibility to the show, a commitment to the theater, the director, and so where I was in that place and time was like, how do I use this like horrible situation that I'm experiencing to impact positively the work and people who come see it?
Yeah.
Like, if I'm going through this right now, like, how can I incorporate this into my performance and tell this story so that I can make as much good, I can touch as many people possible through my performance. And, you know, that's one of those situations where you're blurring a little bit, acting with your personal experience, and still I would not consider that method acting,
which we'll get into. Hopefully. Yeah.
But it's still in that realm where you're directly pulling from your own life, and as a professional in any realm, business, arts, doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't matter what's going on with your personal life. There's always going to be people who do not care. Right. They don't care that you had a hard night. They don't care that you're like in a fight with your spouse, or that your grandparent died, or your car got repossessed. Like, they paid for a ticket and they're there to experience this thing, and your job as a professional is to deliver that, despite what is going on in your personal life.
Yeah.
And hopefully, maybe, if you're lucky, you can use that shitty circumstance that's happening, and you can really share something special with the audience that night, you know?
And I guess if you're the actor, what you want to do is, I'm going through this crap. How can I hone it into what I'm doing now?
Yeah. Or conversely, how can I completely exclude it so I can do my job efficiently?
Ooh.
Because if what you're going through is so contrary to the story you need to tell as a professional, then maybe you need to put it out of your head.
Wow.
Maybe it needs to be completely removed so you can do your job, and then it will still be there for you to pick up at your leisure when the show is done, when the obligation is performed.
Yeah, on your way out, because you just, before we started, you mentioned the saying of, like, you say it, like...
Oh, yeah. Your emotional baggage, your drama will be waiting for you at the stage door.
Mm-hmm.
So leave it at the stage door when you come in, and within those walls, that space, your job is just to tell the story of that person that you were hired, you auditioned for, you got over other people. You were the best person to tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever's happening on the outside, leave it there at the door. Come in the space, tell the story, do this job. Because when you leave, when the show's done, when the curtain comes down, your issues will still be there waiting for you. Your problems will not have gone away.
Yeah.
But if they don't help you do your job, if they're a hindrance to you doing your job and telling that story, then you don't need to bring them with you on stage.
Yeah, you've got to leave it.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm a very
It's
visual...
almost like a weird therapy.
Yeah, I'd assume so. Like, my visual thought is, like, I could see someone who's the actor, like, leaving their baggage, like a physical bag, backpack, suitcase, whatever, outside of the opposite side of the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Then as they step through the doorway, they pick up that character's baggage.
Mm-hmm.
And then proceed.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's helpful, especially if your character has, like, particular baggage.
Emotional.
And if you can, like, be internalizing that and working on that while you're waiting for the show to start, and you're in your dressing room and you're getting into character, or, you know, whatever, that could be extremely, extremely informative.
Yeah.
Especially if the character, as often is the case, nothing like you.
Mm.
And we see actors portray characters in movies and on stage, and we think, oh, so that's what he is like. That's what she's like.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. If you felt that way, 99% of the time, they did their job as a professional.
Yeah.
And that's why you feel that way.
Or you don't get it.
Or you don't get it. Sure, that's possible.
Well,
or maybe that's literally what their life was, and they were just mirroring their exact situation. And so that's exactly what it is.
Because I remember when I was little, and this is just a little kid thing. Like, I remember when I was little, like, if anyone kissed on camera, they've got to be married in real life. You can't be kissing someone else.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. They kiss, so they must be married or intended.
Exactly, yeah. If they're married in the movie, they've got to be married in real life, because that can't be happening off camera. Like, they can't just be acting.
Oh, that's very real.
Yeah. I remember that, like, they've got to be really married in real life, because why would you kiss them? Like,
totally thoughts that first stage kiss I ever had.
Yeah, really?
Something I had to encounter.
Was that in the what's it called, the Sondheim?
Children of Eden,
Sondheim,
which was not Sondheim. It's Stephen Short's. He wrote Wicked. He wrote the music, the lyrics to Pocahontas. He's done a ton of stuff for Disney. Godspell, that's him. He's done a ton of stuff. But
so your first kiss was in there? Or your first stage
was
kiss
Children of Eden.
Yeah.
It was also my first kiss.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Allison.
That's so good. Yeah. And
because
y'all
it
were
was
dating at the time, right?
No, not yet.
No, not yet.
Not at the time.
That's so cool.
But I was like, okay, so this is what. So this is in the script. It's in the material. It needs to happen.
Yeah.
So despite my religious feelings and views at the time, which was to touch or kiss someone who is not like your betrothed or your intended, is like wrong or immoral or disrespectful.
Yeah.
So I had to get over that.
Yeah.
So literally, like in the wings of the theater, just doing like 1, 2, 3 kisses to get over like the
with her.
Yeah, with her
Yeah.
to get over the awkwardness of it not being an actual of it not being an actual true relationship in real life.
Yeah.
To justify the affection
Yeah.
and the touching and stuff.
Oh man, you went somewhere deep, bro.
I did. And then I fell in love with her, which was a whole different interesting thing.
Yeah.
Which was not related, but it did happen.
How do you how does someone of faith who might be playing a character who might act in a different way that the person in their real life believes, acts, whatever, how do you, because it's art, like it's an expression of a story, of someone's life, if it's based on a real life, how do you find a way to separate the two? Although, I mean, from my Catholic faith, like, there is beauty in arts, and that's an aside. But how do you have a certain faith? Like, I believe this and I act this way off stage, but I need to portray this character, this person on stage, and I might have to physically do some things that I might not agree with, but helps the character be, for lack of a better term, created and communicated to the audience.
Yeah. Sometimes you might need to put yourself in that situation mentally, so you can fathom like what that character might do, and just like, what would I do, and then that informs the decisions and the choices you make as that character. What would I do, and how can I find commonality between what I might do and what this character's experience is? And at the very least, you have to find some kind of commonality so you can have understanding or compassion, because each one of us is the hero of our own story, right? It's the way we're designed.
Yeah.
It's the way we're written, if you will. So if you're playing someone and that's not you, you have to figure out how you are the hero of your own story as that character.
Yeah.
Because obviously that character, that person, they made decisions that were justified to them. There was a reason for them. They weren't made in some kind of frivolous fashion, probably. There was a reason that they went that way. And if you can even slightly put yourself in their shoes, then you can start to build that character or build that world and make it an honest storytelling. And it's hard. It's very, very difficult. I think even if you're a proficient actor, there are so many actors that I respect and look up to, and sometimes I'm just in awe of their ability to do it and then snap back into real life.
Yeah.
Because that's a skill you have to have, I think, almost to remain sane. Like, you have to be able to pull yourself out of that character, like we were just talking about, put down their baggage and pick up your own, and not mistakenly take some of their baggage into your life.
Would you say there's a type of character that might be harder to empathize with or sympathize with, to where you can enter into their world, their experience? Because I would assume the protagonist or the person that's lack of a better term, like being abused, or the person that needs to be rescued would be easier to enter into versus maybe the bad guy or the villain.
Absolutely.
I would assume no one wants to sympathize or empathize with a villain.
No.
But
that's the challenge.
Yeah.
And in that situation, I feel like you have to find the humanity in that villain. And you need to understand, okay, if I were in that situation that this villain is in, how would I react?
Yeah.
What would become of me? How would my emotions evolve? How would my person change to cope with? Because something made that person be that way, right? They didn't just spring forth into the world as this villain.
Because we were talking about that earlier.
As a static villain.
You know, like no one's born racist
no,
or
nobody's
bigoted
born
or
just
whatever.
one thing. And so, and I don't know, this may or may not be cheesy or corny, but in the Disney remake of Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent, with Angelina Jolie, one of the things I really liked about the movie was it showed you how someone could go from, could end up where we saw her, which was at her worst in the animated movie, you know, trying to bring the world down and kill, you know, that family, that royal family, to, if you're that intense and bad and wrong, something led you there. There's a reason.
Yeah.
And so figuring that out, like, you have to be your own advocate as a character. Nobody else, I mean, maybe you're in a show where someone else advocates for you, but especially if you're an unlikable character or just a bad character, like, you have to have reasons. If you don't have reasons for portraying that or for committing those actions on stage and in front of people, like, it's gonna come off, I think, weird, uncomfortable, unnatural. Like, you have to be on your own side, at least within the confines of that space, to make it believable, to make it honest. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, you of course, you know, it happens all the time. People have to play horrible characters or mean characters that murder people or rape people. But that actor, of course, has not done that.
Right.
But how in the world do you get into that headspace of a rapist or a murderer? It can be so far removed. But, you know, that's a big part of the challenge.
Yeah.
Is how do I take on that aspect without letting myself become it, without going method and actually maybe doing those things or living that exact life, but, like, how might I react? How can I find a tangible element of humanity that I can connect with that character? And here we have another artistic professional, and part of his challenge is, because he's a composer and a writer, as well as somebody who's been on stage, how do I write things? How do I get things out of my head and onto and into the world where people connect to it and they understand? It's incredibly hard to even fathom it. Yeah. But that's one of his skills. He can take concepts and thoughts of the world and tell these stories in a different lens.
That like, I was interviewing a friend. The one who I said was a producer, and I was like, how do you write music? Like, how do you write a song? Like, the thing that boggles my mind is people who can write. Forget the singer and lyrics. Take that out. Just like the music, and bring people to tears just with the sound of instruments. That's just.
I think there's an honesty of spirit.
And then, how can I write this music? Not like, again, scratch lyrics. Like, the way how can I write these notes in a way that the person can sing it to where they can bring their emotions onto the page, onto the stage.
Yeah.
That's sheer.
And it depends, because, you know, there are some artists that work in that direction.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you hear all the time, is it the music that's more important, the melody that's more important, or is it the words? It just depends.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the right words with the wrong melody is wrong, and vice versa is true.
Is that a talent or a skill?
I think that's a skill.
Adam's
Yeah.
home.
That's echo. Yeah, and then the dogs get really happy.
Yeah, that's crazy. Oh my gosh.
It's I really do believe that it's a skill. It can be also a talent, but unless it's a skill, then what can you do with it?
Yeah.
Right? Because a talent, the way we think of it, is almost like this thing that just exists and it just is. But a skill implies work.
Yeah.
It implies, thought, effort.
Yeah.
Skill is what you build.
Yeah.
Because talent is part of the raw building blocks.
Yeah, like the foundation.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
The talent still needs to be honed and
Yeah.
disciplined.
Yeah.
So you're what would you say your goal is right now? Like, is your from what I know, is your goal Broadway and full time doing this year in, year out?
That was my goal for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I found, interestingly enough, like, the more I've progressed into adulthood, the more I've had to adjust my expectations, which happens to all of us, of course. But specifically artistically, adjusting my expectations because, college, TCU did a great job of teaching you that your goal should, of course, not be to be famous or be on Broadway with your name in lights, but more so to be a working actor. As in, you're constantly working on your craft, you're constantly doing productions of one kind or another, and your success, your fulfillment comes in being an active participant in the arts on a long-term basis, without the attachment of fame or money at all.
Yeah, and isn't that so interesting? Like, most people that go into, let's say, liberal arts, like specific arts, like, they're going to it because of the passion or the love of it, but the rest of the world wants to say, okay, how can you attach dollars to that? How can you make a living? Versus like, no, like, I wanted to go into this and, in reality, spend money to learn about this so I can be the best actor. And whether I'm, on screen or actually on stage, how can I be the best actor I can, or the best painter or artist or talking about Erica, baker, but or writer, but I don't have to then capitalize on that. Like, that's just my passion. I love performing the art of it. It's so interesting.
That's the challenge, because I feel like in a lot of other countries, there's a lot more support for people in the arts in general.
Yeah.
And in this country, I feel like you are only praised or only thought of as a success if your value extends beyond your own paycheck, and you make money for other people.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we've attached success to, that model of being, maybe not being famous, but at least being able to make money for other people. And it's not and it becomes less and less about, what's important. Because ideally, to be my most happy, like, I don't need to make a ton of money. But, like, what would make me most happy is to be able to tell these stories, and these stories to be heard by people who need to hear them, and their lives made better for it. Like, like, in its purest form, I feel like that's the whole point of performing. It just maybe so happens that instead of a skill for abstract algebra or economics or engineering, like, my strong suit, my skill is in storytelling and acting and singing and music and these things. And so, like, I would be so happy okay, for example, my next project is called Broadway Our Way. It's
Our Way?
Our Way.
Okay.
It's a fundraiser for Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS, and Uptown Players here in Dallas. So you volunteer your time. But, so a lot of people might think, okay, well, you're going to go to rehearsal, you know, so you're going to be working your day job, and then you're going to rehearsal on top of that, and performances, and you're not getting paid, which, you know, you should be. But one of the most wonderful things about a situation like this, where it's a benefit, is I get to completely indulge the artistic side. Because my only goal is to honestly tell the stories of whoever it is that I am relating their stories in this situation.
Yeah.
And I can throw myself completely into it and enjoy it, and there's no expectation going in other than that you're committing yourself completely to telling the story. And it's a really nice feeling to have.
Yeah, and I think that's a beautiful thing about, especially people with like the passion for, okay, honestly, whatever their passion is, just like, you know what, I would be doing this if I was getting paid to or not, you know. And it's especially great when, like, what they're doing is excellent, you know, whether it's acting or painting, drawing, directing, like whatever, like CEO, like I'd be doing this because I love it, or I see how it affects other people, or I don't know, like,
yeah, and you see interesting moments of that, because I feel like our culture in the United States just doesn't really appreciate enough or reward enough that artistic endeavor. You know, there are so many other areas of life in this country where people are bolstered economically and public opinion and all these other things, but as an artist and as an actor, so often you are expected to just do it because it feels good or it's fun. And like anything that loses its charm, just like it would for a businessman doing the equivalent in that world, just because it was a skill or talent of his. You know, he's going to want to be compensated and appreciated for what he does and what he brings to the table. And especially right after college, something I ran into is like just saying yes just 'cause you think it would be good for you and it would be fun. And more often than not, you're right if you're trusting your gut. But I feel like that is a luxury. You have to have the time and the money to be able to say, I'm going to do this for free, or I'm going to do this for cheap. I'm going to drive from Dallas to Fort Worth or Dallas to Irving, you know, every day, let's say 5 or 6 days a week, and accrue that financial obligation or burden on myself for the sake of the art. That's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And so, like, me personally, I've had to cut back so much from pursuing the artistic endeavors that make me happy, because
it's not financially prudent.
Yeah. Not only is it not financially prudent, but I can't afford to pay to be in a show. And sometimes that's what it ends up being. Not at all because the theater says or wants that or anything like that, just because, like, if you're only getting compensated, if you're not getting compensated at all, which is common, the most common, but maybe there's a small, like, gas allowance, it's like $50. Well, if you're driving in from Dallas or Fort Worth and it's halfway in, and you get a $50 gas allowance that covers such a small portion, for example, and so you end up paying to do the show.
Like half the trips, maybe. Yeah.
And sometimes it's totally worth it. And I have been in situations where it was totally worth it because I got to work with these amazing people. I got to learn. I got to take risks that otherwise I wouldn't be able to. Or I got to play roles that I would never be able to play in larger markets like New York. And so it's totally worth it. But it's unfortunate that sometimes it boils down to, well, I can't do that. I can't take advantage of this opportunity because I'm too poor.
Yeah.
Or I can't afford to donate my time.
It's so interesting because, like, you think back to, not that I'm a art historian, but, like, you know, let's just say back in the day, because I'm not a historian, but, like, patrons, like, there are people who kept Michelangelo, Raphael, Leonardo, like, whatever, afloat, paid their way because they believed in their art. And now you have things like Patreon, and I know people who have been in, like, YouTube or whatever, who are creators, and some people are very anti that, like, well, get a job and pay your way so you can create your art, which may or may not be good. But then the idea of, here's an artist who has a craft, and that there is goodness within art itself. Like, an art can be good in and of itself, and that is worth supporting, promoting, being a patron of. Like, this art won't exist and benefit the world if there's no support behind it.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, absolutely. I've experienced it indirectly and directly.
Okay, go into that. Like,
I know people from my time in opera. It's very common.
You've done opera?
And
I did not know that.
So yeah,
I don't like disbelieve it. Like, I believe it. Like,
yeah.
I
So
didn't know you'd done
when I started my degree, that's what I was doing. So I did 2 years at the University of St. Thomas.
Yeah.
And I was studying opera and vocal performance. And then I transferred to TCU and I got my Bachelor's of Fine Arts in theater with an emphasis in musical theater. And I minored in music only because I didn't want to take 3 music history classes. I could have majored in music as well, but, you know.
Yeah.
It would have been like for my own, like, just to say so or have that degree. Like, I spent $45,000 extra just
tell you about
to
what
have a
happened back
second
then.
degree, you know. So I didn't do that.
Yeah.
But, you know, I had a lot of friends at classical music that they get patrons, especially if you have a church gig. That's why a lot of times you want to do a church gig, because you get to be compensated to be a skilled artist in a setting where there's respect for it. And oftentimes that happens in houses of worship of one kind or another, whether you're a cantor in the synagogue or whether you're singing at a Catholic church or an Episcopalian church or Anglican, whatever it might be. I've worked in all of those, all of the above, as a performer. But, you know, if you can have a patron, that's awesome. I have been fortunate to experience in the past somebody who came to see several shows at a theater I'd done, and they said, you know, if I can be of any help, like, I believe in you. I believe in what you do. You know, I'm touched by your performance. If I can be of any help to you, let me know. So I've had that experience. And I've had somebody literally buy a plane ticket for me to go to New York and audition.
Wow.
Yeah. I've had that experience.
Yeah.
But of course, then the flip side of that is, like, nothing came from that.
Yeah.
Nothing came from, as in I didn't get cast
in the part
on Broadway or in a national tour or something. A lot of very good things came from the experience, of course.
Was there every feedback from that person that got you there?
No, thankfully. And I say thankfully because there's nothing worse than if you are the benefactor, the pressure
Yeah.
that you feel to like produce a result is intense, you know? Even if that person is extremely wealthy and that ticket only cost them, let's say
was a drop in the
$200,
bucket.
that's
Yeah.
a lot for you. For them, not a super big deal.
Yeah.
And they believe in you, so they're willing to do it. But sometimes, you know, something doesn't happen. And then you have to take it and be like, okay, you know, that's okay.
That's the beauty of belief and some believe in like you do good work, like maybe that just wasn't it, like you're just part of the gig, like but
so much out of your control.
Yeah, and you've done multiple types of performance, whether it was like play or musical. You've even done
Web series.
a web series. Yeah.
No.
What would you say is the difference versus like on the stage, where you're on the stage and you got to go, versus, you know, you're performing for the camera
Yeah.
and the editor? Because like, all right, we're gonna take the best pieces and spice those together. What would you say is the biggest difference?
It's really nice on camera that you get more than one go. Especially if it's something new or different. One of the things that happens, though, is because you have that luxury of repetition, you're rarely off book. So,
what do you mean?
Meaning memorized your lines.
Okay, yeah.
So, oftentimes your lines change. On camera, the writer will, between takes, maybe change something, and you have to incorporate it immediately. It's not memorized. So you have that opportunity to redo things a couple times in the moment. Whereas on stage, it has to be rehearsed in advance. And of course, there's improv that happens and a natural breathing of whatever it might be, but you get to set those intentions and set parameters in advance. So it sets you up for consistency. So you can perform that one thing, that one character, whatever it is, over and over again, night after night.
Yeah.
And there's consistency, and you can do it for long periods of time, and it doesn't like kill you.
So like, if it were a movie or that web series or TV, it's like, all right, we're gonna different inflections, say that another way, do that 20, 30, 40, 50 different times. Oh, you know what, we're gonna change up like a different word or whatever, and then we'll find like the one we like, versus, you know what, do that 50 or whatever different times. Oh, that's the one we like. That's what you need to do for the rest of the extent of the... Yeah.
It can be very tedious.
Yeah.
Very tedious in that way. And that is where I have such incredible, such respect for actors doing film and television. Because the nice thing about being on stage is because the stakes are live, you feel them more immediately, you can dive into them. On camera, literally, you know, the director could be talking to you, you're not shooting. He might give you direction, whatever it might be, and then action. And you have to be in the deepest, you know, depths of this character's horrible journey, or you have to be in the highest highs, and you have to immediately tell that story at that level with that intention, whatever it may be, just as soon as they say action, and then cut or print, and then that moment's done. But you have to be able in that moment to bring such an intense level of honesty of whatever that character is going through, and do it over and over and over and over again. And if you're doing it right, you can't change anything, or you shouldn't change anything, but you have to do it over and over and over again, and battle it not starting to feel mechanical or false or just weird. And that is very much a challenge that you don't face in that same way on stage. Except, of course, if you're in a situation where, like, you're in a Broadway show or something where you do 8 shows a week. In that case, but you have to still deliver that same performance at the same level 8 times a week.
Yeah.
Over and over and over.
For multiple
again.
weeks.
Yeah. And if you talk to some Broadway actors, even though they are skilled, even though it's an art and they're passionate, it's a job.
Yeah.
I've been in Les Mis for 10 years. And I pay my bills, and I'm in Les Mis.
Yeah.
And I haven't done anything different, in the meantime, but I'm on Broadway. I've been doing this show for years, and I'm paying my bills.
Talk about like the difference between theater and movie, TV, performing from a camera. Do you have a preference?
I would say that I do have a preference of live theater because of the immediate exchange of energy that you get to have, the honest interaction that you get with the people there.
Yeah. How much? Because I've heard that before. Like whether it's singer, musician, band, actor, they always say, "Oh, the energy from the crowd is like the best." Like how? But in reality, how much does that really play into your performance? I'm always kind of curious.
Your performance should be set.
Mm-hmm.
It should be set. One of the biggest mistakes you can make, according to many theater professionals and teachers, is altering your performance based off of what you're feeling or experiencing from the audience in the moment.
Which is understandable.
Because every audience is different. So it usually has zero to do with your performance as compared to, it's just a completely different group of people that's completely filled the space. And so,
because hopefully hopefully the crowd is like silent and paying attention, so they can soak it in.
Yeah.
But like, does it help some when you get like a or like laughter?
Sure.
Like,
yeah. Especially depending on the show, it really, really helps. If it's a farce, if there is a lot of comedic elements and shenanigans happening,
I'm sure you want laughter.
You want laughter, but you also you need feedback from humans experiencing that situation. And then there might be a dramatic situation in which you don't need the feedback to feel the experience or tell the story. Like just the way it's written and directed, it lends whatever it needs to lend to that, for not just the actor but also for the audience to go on the journey.
Yeah. What are the struggles of trying to be a full-time actor? Like, I know it just naturally, I have a wife, so so I think I can be very attentive to female struggles in like shape, size, weight, all that stuff. But are there the same struggles as a male actor, or does every actor have to deal with what comes with the territory based on what they want to do?
Yes. Every actor does have to deal with a completely unique set of situations. Of course, because it's a visual art, the physical is almost always going to play a part. You could be perfectly right for a role in every way except you're not 6 feet tall, or you don't have the right look. And that just is what it is. More often than not, it's not personal at all. It's just whatever the demands of the role are, whatever the director's looking for, whatever the producers want, whatever the image they have in their head, who walks through the door, who can not only nail the material, but also comfortably fits into what they have in mind for that character.
This feels like a dumb question because I think it's a simple answer, which I think most questions really do lead to simple answers because we complicate them in our heads. But what does, and this is why I never stepped on the stage or anything, but like, what does it take for a person to memorize 2 hours of dialogue plus lyrics? Like,
Yeah.
wow, what does that take? I mean, like, especially if you're not full time. Like, if, like, I assume, like, if it's your job, it might be easier because that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
But like, you have a job to support you, and then you're doing that at night. But like, what does that take?
Yeah.
That terrifies me. Even the thought of it.
It can be a lot. You know, maybe I am on my way to work and I'm listening to the song that I need to have the lyrics memorized for because we're blocking that scene in rehearsal coming up. So it's like, you know, squeezing it in wherever I can to practice that, to have it hopefully be second nature as quickly as possible. So that then you get to play and have fun with it because you're not constantly thinking about the words and what's coming. You've committed it to memory. And it just, there's no shortcut. Even if you have a photographic memory, you still have to read it all.
So it's like, it seems like there's two parts. Like, I have to commit it to memory, but then once I got to memory and second nature, then I have to express it.
Yeah, then
you can't just say it.
Yeah, then you give yourself that freedom.
Yeah.
Because the foundation's there. You've put in the work, you've memorized the material, and it can be extremely challenging. You know, different projects have different, you know, types of writing styles that maybe the way that writer, their voice isn't how you naturally communicate, and you have to communicate in a completely different cadence and style. You have to memorize that. Maybe there's a dialect that you have to incorporate because it is part of the character and it's important enough to where it has to be there. And ideally there's someone you trust that's involved in the process who you can rely on to give you feedback and make sure that you're being true to the material and telling the story.
What is it like to prep for, you know, because a lot of musicals, you know, let's say some of the most popular ones have been going on for years and years and years, and they come back, and how do you, is there a difference between, let me just pick a musical, like, what's a musical that's been going on forever? Like, we just keep...
Phantom of the Opera, Les Mis?
Yeah, Les Mis. How do you balance, and I don't know, how do you balance, okay, here's the part, here's the character, you know what, also, there's a history of it, there, you know, I've watched past performances. If you're doing a part that's been done before, are you trying to copy what was done before, or do you want to, or does the director want to? What's the preference of like, all right, here's the character, here's the music, here's how you should sing it, here's what's done before, but put your own person into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like
that does happen. It depends on the material. It depends on the project, because, okay, so for example, if you are in a Broadway show and you are a standby, that means that you are there, that you are ready to go if the character that you are playing or ready to play. If that actor for some reason cannot do it,
breaks
like
his leg, drops dead, gets sick, flu, whatever.
You see so many different things. Like, you're in, you have to be there, you have to be ready. You have to be ready to go.
And I guess in that situation, you have to be ready to continue the same character that they were doing.
Same character.
You know?
You don't get to put your own spin on it.
Wow.
Or if you're going into a show, you're replacing someone at a Broadway show. I've heard people talk about this, like, you have 9 days, if you're lucky, to learn the entire track.
Oh my gosh.
And you need to perform. Sometimes it's even as simple, like you were talking about physical stuff earlier. Do you fit into the costume?
Ooh. Yeah.
If you're a woman, are you the same size 2 that the actress that originated the role was? Can you fit into her costumes and sing in that range and portray that character? There are so many things that are completely out of your control.
Yeah.
So if you're in that, like, you have to be ready, you have to be prepared, because there's so much that's out of your control that you have to be...
Hopefully you're ahead of the game.
Ahead of the game, ideally.
I can fit in.
Yeah.
I am at that range.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Do you have a preference between a regular play, just acting, versus musical, where acting and you have to sing? Your preference?
As long as the material, like, what's most important to me is the material. And what I get to express.
Define material.
Through, like, whether it's play, whether it's musical, what's the quality of the writing, the direction, like, that's important.
Like storytelling.
Yeah, like
quality of the music. The person who's telling me what to do, director.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've had equally satisfying experiences both in straight plays and musicals.
Lightning round, sort of.
Sure.
Your favorite performance you've done so far?
Interesting that you would ask that. I would say I played a priest named Foigarde.
What?
French priest.
Okay.
In a restoration comedy, so this is a play. That's probably one of my favorite characters I've ever played.
Why?
He's one of those characters. So often in my career so far, I play characters that come in for a short period of time. They're not main characters, but they have just a really awesome moments. And this character, I was on stage maybe for 10 minutes, but it was that kind of character that's written where you could steal the show.
Yeah.
Where, like, even those 2 hours, people leave and they remember what you did in those 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And that character in that show was one of those types of situations which made it even more fun and, like, an even stronger experience.
Wow. That's great. Hardest performance?
Ooh. I would say the hardest performance... I've been fortunate enough to originate a few roles, and I had one that was hard personally, and I had one that was hard just technically.
Okay. I'll take both.
So, one that was really difficult emotionally, I played this young Mormon kid who kills himself because he's gay.
Yeah. It was like, what, a year or two ago?
Yeah, I've done it twice,
Yeah.
and I did it once here in Dallas, and then I did it once in London.
What was the name of it?
Facing East.
Okay.
It's based on a real life situation of a woman and a play she wrote, and it was very difficult to do. It echoed a lot with me personally, with my family, the way I was raised, religion, and sexuality being a thing. So, that was very difficult in that regard. And then, there have been shows where I had to play something so far removed from who I was.
Like we talked about before.
Yeah. That it was a huge challenge just for that. And maybe the material was new and untested. Like, I had to play, like, an escort or a rent boy, basically, in one show where it was like a Cinderella story or a Cinderfella story. And I had to, like, play this character that had all this like murky moral areas, but you still have to, he's still the hero of his own story, so you still have to piece all that together and make it work and make it feel natural and normal, and that can be a huge challenge.
What play was that, or a musical?
That show, I played a character called Robbie, and the show was called Soho Cinders.
Okay.
And so that was a take on like the Cinderella type story, but it was male centric.
In parts where, so the facing east, did you know going in that was personally going to be a hard world to step into?
Yes and no. I mean, I read it, and so I knew it happened, but there's that whole element when you're in performance, and especially like for that show, it was professionals getting together with minimal rehearsal to perform a piece. When I did it, well, both times I did it, but when I did it in London, there was more time.
You did it on London's Broadway. What's it called? West End?
On West End. Yeah, the West End.
God. How long were you out there for? And that was to launch it, right?
That was to do, like it's UK thing. It's also, we've also done US, and then there's been a Canada production.
It's gotta be a huge deal.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, certainly. I mean, it is and it isn't. Like, nothing was like, it was not a make or break situation, but it was still like a huge, like incredible thing to be a part of, and a bucket list for sure type of situation. But it was in Dallas that the difficulty of it first like really hit home, because, for example, the actor that was playing my mother in the show, she was phenomenal, and what she brought to it informed my experience like even more, and like it made those moments of intensity like that much more heightened, because that's one of the great gifts about working with really amazing actors, is that they bring something special out of you, or they like help facilitate you to do what you do and learn and grow in that moment, even without them actually manipulating the events at all.
Yeah. Dream role.
Dream.
You have to pick one. Force you to pick one. You're back on that desert island. You can only play one role for the rest of your life.
Pirelli
From
Sweeney Todd.
Which one was Pirelli?
He is the Italian barber who is the first person that Sweeney kills.
That's right, because what's his face played him in the movie?
Sacha Baron Cohen.
Yeah. Why?
It's a sweet role. You are on stage for like 10 minutes. You have this huge song. You get murdered, and then you can be on Facebook until the end of the show, and you come out for "Swing Your Razor" at the very end of the show.
Yeah.
You're a dead ghost.
Okay, last one.
And people remember.
Last one. What happens during intermission? What are y'all doing? What's everybody doing during intermission? I've always wondered, like, what are they doing?
You're usually changing your costume. Maybe if you have time to socialize, maybe you're socializing a little bit. But usually you're changing into costume, like dabbing off all the sweat and reapplying makeup if you need to.
Because it's usually, what, 15 minutes?
10 or 15, depending on the show.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have a ton of stuff to do. Sometimes you have a costume change, a wig change, a whole bunch of stuff. So
yeah,
it just depends.
Okay.
Sometimes if you're lucky, you have nothing, and so you can just sit there,
just like depending on
and cool down.
Yeah. Like what was it? The play that goes wrong. What's it called?
That's what it's called.
That's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they just
Yeah,
have to
the
go
play that
off
goes
stage,
wrong.
come back for the second act, and everything falls apart.
Yeah.
That's all we gotta do. Cool.
Show up
Yeah.
in the right costume. But even then, they have to change costume in a costume that looks exactly the same, but with slight differences. Like
Yeah.
whatever, there might be a tear in the costume, or their wig might be askew. Typically, that means they actually changed wig, changed costume. It's not like that was done to what you're wearing. You have like sometimes 3 or 4 of the same costume, depending on what has to happen to it.
Well, cool. We made it happen. Nothing went right tonight, but this is awesome. So thank you.